There is a reason a woman pauses, looks twice, and feels something deeper when she meets a man who chooses himself first. Not because he is selfish, but because he carries a quiet strength, the kind you cannot fake. When a man respects his time, his emotions, and his purpose, he creates a standard. And a woman naturally aligns with that energy because she can feel that he is not driven by validation. He's driven by vision. Self-respect sets the standard for how others treat you because the way you value yourself becomes the blueprint for how the world responds to you. When you carry yourself with dignity, when you honor your boundaries, when you refuse to tolerate disrespect, people automatically rise to the level of the energy you project. But when you shrink, compromise, or allow others to take advantage of you, you signal that mistreatment is acceptable, and it never is. Self-respect is not something you ask for. It's something you embody, and once you embody it, it becomes impossible for others to ignore. A man who deeply respects himself walks differently. He speaks with intention. He doesn't need to raise his voice, prove his worth, or convince anyone to choose him. His presence communicates enough because he knows who he is, he knows what he brings, and he refuses to lose that identity for anyone. When a man operates from self-respect, he chooses his peace over unnecessary conflict, he chooses his growth over temporary validation, and he chooses his standards over fleeting emotions. This is why people treat him with admiration, because they can feel that he has done the internal work. Self-respect also means understanding your value, even when others don't see it. It's easy to stand tall when everyone praises you. The real test is how you carry yourself when you're misunderstood, ignored, or underappreciated. A man with self-respect doesn't chase after those who don't recognize his worth. He doesn't beg for attention or validation. He doesn't try to force a place where he isn't valued. Instead, he creates space for people who genuinely appreciate him to enter his life. And when he does that, the quality of his relationships changes. People who come into his world treat him with the respect he gives himself daily. Another truth about self-respect is that it influences your boundaries. When you respect yourself, you don't allow certain behaviors because you know they drain your energy, disturb your peace, or compromise your identity. You say no when you need to. You walk away when necessary. You stop explaining yourself to those committed to misunderstanding you. Every boundary you set is a message that says, "This is who I am, and this is how I will be treated." And people pay attention. They either rise to meet your standard or they remove themselves. Either outcome is a blessing. People respect what is rare, and self-respect is rare in a world full of insecurity, approval-seeking, and emotional desperation. When a man refuses to lower his standards for acceptance, he becomes magnetic. His confidence is quiet, his presence is grounded, and his energy is powerful. That's why others treat him with respect, because he treats himself that way first. Women admire emotional discipline and personal boundaries because these qualities signal strength, maturity, and stability, traits that create safety in a relationship. Emotional discipline is not about suppressing feelings. It's about understanding them, managing them, and refusing to let them dictate your behavior. A man who has mastered this is not reactive, impulsive, or easily thrown off balance. He remains grounded even when situations become tense or emotionally charged. This steadiness is deeply attractive because it shows that he is in control of himself, not controlled by external circumstances. When a man demonstrates emotional discipline, he shows that he can navigate life with clarity. He doesn't lash out in anger, act out of fear, or run from discomfort. He processes emotions with awareness. He understands when to speak and when silence is more powerful. He chooses his actions carefully instead of being driven by impulse. This creates an environment where a woman feels understood rather than judged, heard rather than dismissed, and safe rather than uncertain. His emotional maturity becomes a source of comfort, not chaos. Women also pay attention to how a man handles conflict. A man with emotional discipline doesn't escalate problems. He doesn't turn small misunderstandings into full-blown arguments. He doesn't get defensive or take things personally. Instead, he seeks solutions. He listens, he reflects, and he responds with intention. This ability to remain composed during difficult moments communicates that he can protect the relationship, not damage it. It shows that he can be trusted with her emotions, her vulnerabilities, and her heart. Personal boundaries are equally powerful. A man with boundaries is not rigid or cold. He is simply aware of what he will and won't accept. He respects his time, his peace, and his values. And because he respects himself, others naturally follow. Women admire this because it reflects self-worth. A man with boundaries doesn't allow disrespect, manipulation, or inconsistent behavior. He walks away from anything that threatens his integrity or mental well-being. And this is where the respect deepens, because a man who can walk away is a man who cannot be controlled. Boundaries also ensure balance in relationships. When a man is clear about his expectations and limits, he creates a steady foundation. He doesn't lose himself in love. He doesn't sacrifice his identity to keep someone. He remains rooted in who he is. This inspires trust because she knows he's not operating from desperation. He is choosing her from a place of strength, not neediness. Another aspect that women admire is that boundaries create predictability. She knows where he stands. She knows what he values. She knows how he will respond. This consistency eliminates confusion and emotional guessing games. A man with boundaries is dependable, and dependability is incredibly attractive. Emotional discipline and personal boundaries reflect a man's relationship with himself. When he can manage his emotions and protect his space, he communicates that he is emotionally safe, mentally strong, and deeply self-aware. And to a woman, that is not just admirable, it is irresistible. A man who prioritizes himself radiates confidence and stability because everything about him communicates that his life has structure, purpose, and direction. He isn't drifting, he isn't waiting for someone to validate him, and he isn't hoping for another person to complete him. He is already whole. When a man chooses himself, his goals, his mental health, his peace, his standards, he naturally moves with a sense of assurance that others can feel without him saying a word. His confidence doesn't come from ego, it comes from clarity. He knows what he wants, but more importantly, he knows who he is. Prioritizing himself means he invests in his life before investing in anything else. He focuses on his ambitions, builds his skills, strengthens his mindset, and refuses to sacrifice his long-term growth for temporary comfort. This consistency creates an internal stability that becomes impossible to ignore. Others sense that he has direction, that he's not controlled by impulse, and that he's not easily swayed by external pressure. A man like this is attractive because he stands out in a world where many lose themselves trying to fit in or trying too hard to be chosen. Women especially feel the difference. A man who prioritizes himself doesn't rush into relationships out of loneliness. He doesn't cling out of fear. He doesn't mold himself to be liked. Instead, he remains grounded in his identity, allowing connection to form naturally rather than through force. This creates emotional safety because she knows he isn't expecting her to fix him or complete him. His sense of fulfillment comes from within, not from her approval. Confidence grows when a man takes responsibility for his life, when he treats himself with respect through discipline, self-care, healthier choices, and a clear vision. He automatically becomes more confident. He no longer questions his worth. He no longer looks outward for permission. He becomes comfortable with his own presence. And that kind of comfort is powerful. You can see it in the way he speaks, the way he makes decisions, the way he handles stress, and the way he maintains boundaries. He isn't easily shaken because he has built himself from the inside out. Stability is another powerful effect of self-prioritization. When a man has a balanced life, emotionally, mentally, financially, spiritually, he becomes a pillar of strength. He approaches challenges logically rather than emotionally. He solves problems instead of creating them. He stays consistent even when life gets unpredictable. This reliability becomes a source of trust. She knows he won't crumble under pressure. She knows he won't act out of insecurity. She knows he won't lose himself in the relationship. He brings stability because he has stability within. A man who prioritizes himself also becomes selective with his time and energy. He doesn't chase, he doesn't beg, and he doesn't tolerate chaos. His standards rise, and because he expects more from himself, others naturally expect more from him. His presence commands respect without him asking for it. The man who puts himself first doesn't do it to impress anyone. He does it because he understands that the strongest relationships, careers, and futures begin with a strong self. And that strength becomes the very confidence and stability the world can't help but notice. Choosing yourself shows that your life has purpose beyond relationships because it reflects a deeper understanding of who you are and what you're here to create. When a man chooses himself, he shows that his identity isn't defined by who approves of him, who stays with him, or who gives him attention. His life has direction, meaning, and personal ambition that stand independently from any relationship. This is powerful because it shows that he's not living through others, he's living through his own mission. When your life revolves solely around relationships, you lose balance. You become dependent on someone else for happiness, validation, and emotional stability. But when you choose yourself first, you reclaim control over your life. You focus on your growth, your dreams, your goals, and your inner evolution. You build something real, something that cannot be taken away just because someone leaves. This level of independence is attractive not because it makes you detached, but because it makes you grounded. Choosing yourself communicates that your worth doesn't come from being wanted. It comes from being purposeful. It reflects that you have goals that matter, responsibilities you take seriously, and a vision you're committed to. People respect a man who has a mission because he isn't waiting for someone to give his life meaning. He creates it. A man like this doesn't crumble when relationships shift. His world doesn't collapse if someone walks away. He doesn't feel empty without constant companionship. He stands firm because his foundation is built on something deeper than romantic validation. A man who consistently chooses himself becomes more disciplined. He spends his time building his career, improving his skills, strengthening his body, nurturing his mental health, and shaping his future. This dedication develops a sense of purpose that carries him forward even when life becomes challenging, and the presence of purpose makes him magnetic. Others can feel the direction and stability he brings. Women especially admire a man whose life is driven by something beyond them, not because he is uninterested, but because he is fulfilled. She doesn't feel the pressure of being responsible for his happiness. Instead, she becomes inspired by his drive, his ambition, and his commitment to something greater than himself. Being with a man who has purpose feels safe because he isn't acting out of desperation. He's choosing her from a place of strength, not loneliness. Choosing yourself also teaches others how to treat you. When people see that you're dedicated to your goals, they respect your time. When they see you protecting your peace, they approach you with more care. When they see you valuing your dreams, they learn to value you too. Purpose commands respect in a way that words never could. Choosing yourself is not about rejecting relationships. It's about refusing to lose yourself inside them. It's about recognizing that love should complement your life, not replace your sense of direction. When you prioritize your purpose, everything else, respect, attraction, meaningful connections, begins to align naturally because people can feel the power of a man who knows exactly what he's living for. Women trust men who don't abandon their goals for temporary emotions because it shows discipline, consistency, and a long-term mindset. When a man stays committed to his purpose, even when life gets chaotic or emotionally intense, it signals that he has control over himself. He doesn't let impulsive feelings, sudden desires, or emotional pressure derail the direction of his life. This kind of steadiness is rare, and it naturally inspires trust. A man who refuses to sacrifice his mission for momentary emotions reveals that he is reliable, not just in the highs of life, but also in the lows. When a man has goals that he refuses to compromise, he communicates that he is anchored in something meaningful. He has a vision that guides him, a destination he's working toward, and a version of himself he's constantly striving to build. He's not easily distracted, and he doesn't crumble when someone challenges him emotionally. Women trust this kind of man because they know he will not make decisions based on insecurity, anger, or impulsiveness. His choices are rooted in logic, intention, and purpose. A man who sticks to his path, even when emotions run high, shows maturity. He understands that emotions are temporary, but the consequences of abandoning his goals are long-lasting. He knows that reacting in the moment can cost him opportunities, progress, and self-respect. Instead of being controlled by feelings, he allows feelings to pass while he stays aligned with his purpose. This level of emotional discipline makes a woman feel safe because she knows he will not lose himself in arguments, frustrations, or fleeting attractions. Women also trust men who maintain their goals because it shows they can lead themselves. Leadership begins with self-control. If a man cannot manage his own life, his own dreams, or his own emotional fluctuations, he cannot be trusted to lead in a relationship. But a man who remains committed to his mission proves he has the ability to guide, protect, and build. He does not fall apart under pressure, and he does not sacrifice his progress for instant gratification. Another powerful reason women trust this kind of man is because consistency equals security. When he says he's working towards something, he follows through. He doesn't change direction every time he feels stressed, confused, or overwhelmed. Instead, he stays focused. This consistency makes her feel that he is dependable, not just emotionally, but mentally and spiritually. She can trust a man who doesn't run from challenges or throw away his commitments whenever emotions rise. A man who honors his goals is also a man who honors himself. He isn't seeking approval or validation. He's not trying to impress anyone. He is driven by a deeper calling. And because he respects his own journey, she learns to respect him too. Women trust men who remain grounded in their purpose because it shows they are capable of long-term thinking, emotional resilience, and meaningful action. When a man does not abandon his goals for temporary emotions, he shows that his life is guided by vision, not impulse. And that strength, that consistency, that discipline creates a level of trust that words alone could never build. A man who stays grounded in his values becomes naturally more attractive because his character stands out in a world where many people bend, shift, and compromise under pressure. Values are the internal compass that guide decisions, shape behaviors, and reveal who you truly are when no one is watching. When a man lives by his values consistently, he becomes stable, reliable, and trustworthy. This grounded energy draws people toward him, not just romantically, but in every area of life, because true strength is rooted in unwavering principles, not in temporary confidence. A man with strong values carries himself differently. He doesn't need to brag or seek validation. His integrity speaks for him. He makes choices that reflect his beliefs, even when they are difficult, unpopular, or inconvenient. This exposes a depth of character that is rare. Women find this deeply attractive because it shows that he isn't influenced by peer pressure, trends, or emotional manipulation. He moves from conviction, not confusion. Being grounded in values also eliminates inconsistency, and inconsistency is one of the biggest sources of mistrust in relationships. A man who knows his values doesn't say one thing and do another. He doesn't change his attitude based on emotions or external approval. His behavior remains steady because his decisions come from a clear internal foundation. This type of man is predictable in the best way. You know where he stands. You know what he believes. You know how he will react in moments of challenge. This predictability creates emotional safety, which is one of the most attractive qualities a person can have. A man rooted in his values is also harder to manipulate. He can't be guilt-tripped into doing something that contradicts his integrity. He doesn't compromise who he is to keep someone or to avoid conflict. This sets him apart because it communicates strength. He is not easily swayed, not easily broken, and not easily controlled. Women are drawn to this because it reflects leadership, real leadership that comes from within, not from dominance or bravado. Another powerful aspect of values-driven behavior is that it shows discipline. A man who lives by his values is not governed by temporary temptations. He does not sacrifice long-term integrity for short-term pleasure. He chooses actions that align with the man he wants to be. This discipline builds self-respect, and self-respect is the foundation of true attractiveness. Others will always see the way he treats himself and respond accordingly. Being grounded in values also means a man is clear about his standards. He doesn't entertain chaos, disrespect, or emotional inconsistency. He chooses relationships that align with his principles. He doesn't tolerate situations that threaten his peace or growth. This clarity creates high-value boundaries, which again enhance his attractiveness because they demonstrate emotional maturity and self-awareness. Most importantly, a values-driven man inspires trust. She feels confident in who he is, not because he says the right things, but because he lives them. His authenticity becomes magnetic. His steadiness becomes comforting. His integrity becomes irresistible. Prioritizing your growth creates a powerful masculine energy because it signals that you are actively evolving instead of remaining stagnant. Growth is movement, progression, and direction, and masculine energy is deeply connected to purpose, ambition, and forward momentum. When a man chooses to invest in himself, he cultivates an inner strength that naturally radiates power, not the loud kind, not the aggressive kind, but the grounded, centered, unshakable kind that others feel the moment he walks into a room. A man focused on growth is constantly refining his mind, strengthening his body, expanding his skills, and evolving emotionally. This continuous improvement creates confidence, and real confidence is magnetic. It's not arrogance. It's not about being better than others. It's about being better than who you were yesterday. When a man is committed to this process, He develops a presence that commands respect without a word being spoken. Growth gives a man direction, and direction creates masculine energy. You can feel it in the way he talks about his goals, the way he approaches challenges, and the discipline he brings to his routines. He is not drifting. He is not lost. He knows where he's going. Even if he hasn't reached the destination yet, the fact that he is moving with intention creates a sense of purpose that is undeniably attractive. Women can sense this kind of energy instantly. It makes them feel safe because a man who prioritizes growth is a man who can handle responsibility. He doesn't run from difficulties. He doesn't collapse under pressure. He doesn't avoid hard decisions. He faces life head on, and this resilience becomes part of the masculine aura he carries. She knows he won't break when life becomes heavy because he's already building himself to withstand storms. Prioritizing growth also means a man is internally fulfilled. He's not looking for someone to complete him. He's not hoping a relationship will fix him. He already feels grounded because his self-worth comes from his progress, his discipline, and his accomplishments. That independence is powerful. It makes him more selective, more confident, and more emotionally balanced. Others can sense that he's operating from abundance, not from neediness. Growth also amplifies masculine energy because it requires discipline. Discipline builds self-respect, and self-respect builds confidence. Whether he's working on his career, improving his physical health, strengthening his mindset, or healing from past wounds, every act of self-improvement makes him stronger, and true strength has nothing to prove. It simply exists. It is steady, calm, and rooted. A man who prioritizes growth becomes a leader in his own life. He sets the tone, sets the pace, and sets the standard. He inspires others without trying because his actions speak for him. Women admire this because it shows emotional maturity and ambition. It shows that he is not stagnant. It shows that he is building, evolving, rising. Masculine energy grows when a man grows. The more he invests in himself, the more powerful, confident, and grounded he becomes. This is the kind of energy that attracts respect, admiration, and genuine connection, because people are naturally drawn to someone who is constantly becoming a better version of himself. When you don't chase, you command respect without asking for it, because your actions communicate self-worth louder than anything you could ever say. Chasing is rooted in insecurity. It signals that you need someone else's attention, validation, or approval to feel whole. But when you step back, when you refuse to beg for someone's time, when you let people come to you instead of running after them, you send a clear message. I value myself too much to pursue anything that isn't choosing me back. That level of self-respect instantly elevates your presence. People are naturally drawn to what is not desperate. When you chase, you show that the other person is the prize and you are the pursuer trying to earn a position. But when you don't chase, you show that you are the one who is valuable. You demonstrate that your time, your attention, and your energy are not given freely. They must be earned. This shifts the dynamic entirely. Instead of trying to prove yourself, you allow others to demonstrate whether they are worthy of being in your life. Not chasing doesn't mean you're cold or uninterested. It means you're selective. It means you don't settle for half-hearted effort. It means you're aware of your worth and are willing to walk away from anything that doesn't align with it. This is where respect begins. People respect what has boundaries, what has standards, what isn't easily available. When you stop running after others, they begin to see your value clearly, because your absence becomes louder than your presence ever could. When you don't chase, you also show emotional stability. You're not ruled by impulse. You're not acting out of fear of losing someone. You're not obsessed with outcomes. You allow things to unfold naturally. And this calmness is powerful. It tells others that you are grounded, secure, and confident in yourself. You're not desperate for connection because you're already complete on your own. Women especially respect a man who doesn't chase because it shows masculine control. Control over emotions, control over reactions, control over desires. It signals that he isn't driven by neediness. Instead, he moves with intention. He observes effort rather than demanding attention. He chooses rather than pleads. He stays centered rather than being pulled around by someone else's availability. Not chasing also filters out the wrong people. Those who only respond when you pursue them are not people who genuinely value you. When you remove chasing from your behavior, the only people who remain are those who choose you willingly, freely, and consistently. This alone creates healthier, more balanced relationships because they are built on mutual interest, not one-sided effort. And most importantly, when you don't chase, you protect your dignity. You never lose yourself trying to win someone. You never sacrifice your self-respect for attention. You never trade your identity for affection. Instead, you remain whole, grounded, and confident in who you are. In the end, the core message of this entire speech comes down to one simple truth. A man who chooses himself first becomes a man the world cannot ignore. When you respect yourself, honor your boundaries, stay grounded in your values, and stay loyal to your purpose, you naturally elevate your presence. You stop seeking validation because you already carry it within you. You stop chasing because you understand that what is meant for you will never require you to lose your dignity. You stop abandoning your goals because you know your future depends on the discipline you build today. This kind of man becomes magnetic, not because he tries to impress anyone, but because he leads himself with strength and clarity. His emotional discipline creates safety. His growth creates admiration. His standards create respect. And his independence makes him irresistible. Women do not respect the man who bends for love. They respect the man who remains whole in love. They gravitate toward the man who knows who he is, where he's going, and what he will never compromise. Choosing yourself first is not selfish. It is the foundation of your power. Because when you stand firm in your identity, when you refuse to abandon yourself for temporary emotions or approval, you become the kind of man who commands respect naturally. You become the man who leads, inspires, and attracts without effort. You become the man whose presence speaks louder than words. At the end of the day, the world respects a man who respects himself. And when you build your life on this principle, everything else, love, success, peace, and purpose, falls into place exactly where it belongs.